Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and the winner from the poll for today's video was why it is that the UK thinks that the EU is going to fold over Brexit, why it's going to give in at the last minute. Now, it sounds so ridiculous that anyone acting for the UK could possibly imagine that the EU are just going to give in to all our ridiculous demands at the last moment if we push the idea that we will allow no deal until the very end. But this is exactly what's happened. All the key Brexiteers, both inside and outside the Conservative Party, were saying exactly this. Theresa May used the phrase, no deal is better than a bad deal, in her manifesto in 2017, and the Brexiteers are still arguing the same point even now. This is why they are horrified by the concept that anyone wants to take no deal off the table, quite apart from the fact that there are people who actively want a no deal. There are many others who don't, but they genuinely believe that the threat of it is a bargaining chip and enough to bring the EU to heel on this. Now, to explain this frankly baffling behaviour, particularly to people outside of the UK, I need to go through four aspects of the political elite psyche in the UK. So the first one, I don't think this is a peculiarly British behaviour, but the first important feature is the incapacity to understand that opinions are just those. A lot of people believe something so strongly, particularly in the political arena, that they refuse to believe that others could have a different point of view, because for them it is self-evident. So when people do express different views, they just assume that these people are either stupid or up to no good. The concept of fairness is a classic example of something that is entirely subjective. For example, positive discrimination is often essential in order to get unrepresented groups into prominent roles. But doing so means that although you'd still only promote suitable people for the role, you may not be promoting the very best for it. So doing this is unfair to those who might otherwise have been the best candidate, but not doing it is unfair to the future potential applicant who really need role models, to see as they grow up as that being an option. So what is fair is never really objective. There are always arguments both ways. The second thing is that Britain has never really believed in the political aims of the EU. I've always rationalised this in terms of the recent memories of occupation. In living memory, every major European power has been occupied by foreign and unfriendly forces, but the UK wasn't. We've grown up with stories of the Battle of Britain, Waterloo, Trafalgar, the defeat of the Spanish Armada. They're all deeply ingrained into us. And when it comes to the Roman or Norman invasions, where actually we were defeated, they're so far in the past that it's not really the same country, so we don't really identify it as such. It sort of gives this element of invincibility to which we sort of think we're immune to the effects of warfare. I mean, people sometimes talk about the Nazi occupation of the Isle of Wight, but a small island off our south coast is not quite the same in the public psyche as an invading army marching through the streets of our most prominent cities. But this is different from much of the rest of Europe, even though such events are fading fast from living memory now. And maybe that's responsible for a bit of creeping complacency in some continental nations where there are some, just like in Britain, questioning the purpose of the EU. But I think generally speaking, they're still in the history lessons and so can't be ignored. And the European community began as a project to pursue long-term peace in Europe after centuries of regular warfare is completely lost on the UK. Even though Winston Churchill, the same person that many of these people will revere, talked about just such a thing for just such a purpose. Most of us simply view it as an economic powerhouse. There are a few of us in the UK who appreciate the political aims, but not many. We are massively outnumbered. So it's only seen in terms of economic benefit, as opposed to those being the carrots to bind together the political aims. So as I was growing up, for example, I remember hearing that President de Gaulle of France was refusing to allow the UK to join the EEC, and I was wondering why our wartime ally was being such a dick about it. Of course, I now know that it was because he understood that Britain would only ever see the organisation in terms of financial aspects. He knew we'd never appreciate the main aim and therefore would just interfere with that. And he was right. And this goes back to my first point about not understanding how someone else can have a genuinely different political viewpoint. The UK simply cannot believe that the EU attaches any importance on anything other than economic benefit. Their thinking as we started the Brexit process was that the EU would suffer from not getting a deal, which financially, yes, they would. And so they'd have to agree to a free trade deal without making us sign up to any of their bothersome rules. The idea that they would support Ireland over the border issue was considered ridiculous. The idea that they would not allow the UK to have whatever it wanted, even if it meant EU businesses would suffer, unthinkable. The third point is elaborating on the point about the belief that we'd get a free trade deal without having to agree to any EU rules is also born of ignorance. These people simply don't understand how the EU, how trade deals, or indeed how international diplomacy works. Now, in an interview with Der Spiegel, Sir Ivan Rogers, one of the most experienced EU civil servants the UK has, had this to say. He said, "This is an endemic problem. I am one of the few who has worked for the bulk of my career on European issues. British politicians don't understand what the single market or customs union is, or how the EU really works. This is a problem in many member states, but it is worse here. I have worked with several prime ministers very closely. Although all of them have been very able people, none of them have had a deep understanding how the European Union works. They don't have any emotional attachment to the EU because we've always had a rather mercantile relationship with our neighbours." So the brainless idea that it's ever possible to have a free trade deal between nations without some alignment of standards made perfect sense to them because they've never looked into it. They've never looked at the details of free trade deals that are actually in existence around the world. They had no idea that the free trade talks between the EU and the US stalled over fundamental disagreements on standards. So why would supposedly intelligent people ever have such confidence that they know how things are going to work out in an area that they have no experience in and have never researched? Well, that brings me on to point 4, confidence. Many senior people in the Conservative Party are famous for having been educated at Eton. This is a world-famous private school that has produced many political and business leaders around the world for generations, well over 100 years. But they don't actually have an amazing academic record for such an expensive school, at any rate. I mean, of course, as it would be for any private school, it's good, but that's not where their unique strength lies. Eton is absolutely world-class at surgically implanting confidence to the power of arrogance in their pupils. You must have seen this in workplaces, not necessarily Etonians, but people who are confident tend to have others follow them, even when they don't really know what they're doing. In every large workplace, managers will always be a mixture of the genuinely good ones and those who simply push their way to the top with sheer bluff. And I think there's got to be something in our DNA that respects confidence because it gives the impression that they know what they're doing. I mean, if we don't, then surely we should follow the one who does. That makes sense, right? And so Eton pushes this confidence into their charges. These people all have a huge level of confidence, which has its advantages, of course. But one big disadvantage is that it doesn't just fool others, but themselves as well. After all, if you're that confident, what's the point of fact-checking or discussing things with others? Those are for doubters, not Etonians. Take David Davis, for example, the first Brexit secretary. He didn't attend Eton, but he is often talked about in Conservative circles as the most confident person many of them have met who didn't attend Eton. And this just gives you some measure of the traits they respect. Not intelligence, not the ability to get things done. Confidence, that's it, confidence, and that confidence projected. There's a legendary story about how he impressed the Tory hierarchy at Alan Clark's castle after one dinner. Basically, he walked something that's called the Black Route. It's on this castle, there's some crumbling ramparts. And he walked them and back again with his hands in his pockets in a casual air. And they marvelled at this. Oh, this man is going to go far, they said. Even though he was a commoner from their point of view, they welcomed him into the fold. They'd never seen such confidence in someone who had not attended Eton. And this was a sure sign that he was a leader for the future. And that's it. You know, and it's this level of confidence that allows Brexiteers to never question their plan. Even when their predictions have been proved wrong at every turn, It's not even like they're ignoring facts so much as they're literally never questioning their own abilities. I mean, why would they? It's made them rich and powerful. So if they do get their way and we do go right off the cliff edge in the certain belief that the EU will crack at the last moment, they will actually be the most shocked people in the world when it doesn't happen. It just doesn't make sense to them on any level. And even if it does happen and everyone else is saying, you stupid bastards, they'll just be stood there. They'll not go, hang on a minute, how did we mess that up? No, that won't be what they say. They will just look at it and think, those EU leaders are as mad as hatters. What on earth did they do this for? And that's what it's down to. Those are the four things that breed this confidence that the EU is going to crack beyond all reason. And this is the real danger that we face, that these people, if they have the steering wheel, could actually drive us off because they do not know what they're doing. And they will never question what they're doing. So anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, and click the bell notification. And until next time, I'll see you later.